A 17-year-old just ran 44.10 in the 400 meters against professional adults while still in high school. At an age when most teenagers are still figuring out homework, video games, and what they want to be, Quincy Wilson was already doing something almost no one in track history had ever done. He wasn't just winning races, he was running times that made grown professionals look twice. And the scary part? He was still just a kid. Before the world started talking about Olympic teams, world records, and one-lap greatness, Quincy Wilson was just a young athlete from Chesapeake, Virginia. He came from a family that understood sports. His parents were both former college athletes, and the competitive mindset was already in the house. But even with talent around him, nobody could have fully predicted how quickly this kid would rise. Source: he got into track at a young age, and almost immediately, something felt different. The speed was real, the stride looked natural, the confidence was there. And as the years passed, he wasn't just improving, he was separating himself. By the time he was 14, Quincy had already broken Obia Moore's under 14 national record in the 400 meters. That alone would have been enough to make him one of the most exciting young runners in America. But for Quincy, that was only the beginning. And this is where the story gets serious. His family saw the potential. Not just good potential, not just maybe one day potential. They saw something special enough to make a major decision. Quincy and his family relocated to Potomac, Maryland, so he could attend Bullis School, a place with a much stronger athletic setup and one of the most respected sprint programs in the country. That move changed everything. At Bullis, Quincy stepped into a program led by Coach Joe Lee, a coach known for building elite athletes and creating a culture where talent gets sharpened, not wasted. For a young runner with rare gifts, it was the perfect place. Suddenly, Quincy wasn't just a promising kid anymore. He was now in an environment designed to push greatness out of him. Source: and he responded fast. Really fast. In 2023, his name started spreading across track circles. Then, in 2024, everything exploded. During the indoor season, Quincy defended his New Balance Nationals indoor title and ran a stunning 45.76 in the 400 meters, a national high school indoor record. For most athletes, a run like that becomes the defining performance of a career. For Quincy, it became another checkpoint. Then came the outdoor season, and this is when the rest of the country realized they were not watching a normal high school athlete. At the U.S. Olympic trials in Eugene, Quincy walked into one of the hardest meets in the world as the youngest guy in the room. No experience advantage, no easy lane, no soft landing, just pressure, expectation, and the best quarter-milers in America. Most teenagers would have been overwhelmed. Quincy looked like he belonged. In the first round, he ran 44.66, a world under 18 best. Then somehow, he came back and ran even faster in the semifinals, 44.59. That time didn't just break records, it sent a shockwave through the sport. He eventually finished 6th in the final, but the message was already clear. Quincy Wilson was no longer the future, he was already part of the present. Think about that for a second. A teenager, running 44.5, on one of the biggest stages in American track, against elite adults. That's not hype, that's history. Those performances earned him a place in Team USA's 4x400 relay pool for the Paris Olympics, making him the youngest American male track and field Olympian ever. Suddenly, the kid who had moved states for better training was now headed to the Olympic Games before most people his age could even drive. Source: and if that sounds impossible, it gets even crazier. At the Olympics, Quincy ran the leadoff leg for Team USA in the men's 4x400 relay heats. He helped the Americans qualify for the final. He wasn't used in the final itself, but because he contributed in the qualifying round, he still earned an Olympic gold medal when Team USA went on to win the final in Olympic record time. In other words, Quincy Wilson became an Olympic champion while still in high school. Source: that should have been the perfect ending. But for a story like this, it was only the start of a much heavier chapter. Because success at that age doesn't just bring praise, it brings pressure. A lot of it. Suddenly, every race mattered more. Every split got analyzed. Every result turned into a headline. The same people who once celebrated the underdog began expecting domination every time he touched the track. Quincy wasn't just a talented teenager anymore. He was now being watched like a future superstar. And that kind of attention can change everything. Behind the scenes, Quincy was still doing what normal teenagers do. He was still balancing school, expectations, training, and a life that was changing at extreme speed. Even after becoming an Olympic gold medalist, he still had to go back to school, finish reading assignments, and wake up early for class and practice. That contrast says everything about how unusual his life had become. But there was another side to all this fame. The doubts, the criticism, the internet comments. Quincy later admitted that social media can be there, but it cannot become who you are. That mattered, because once the hype grows big enough, people stop treating a teenager like a teenager. They treat him like a finished product. And Quincy was nowhere near finished. Even in victory, there were signs that this journey would not be smooth. Quincy spoke about dealing with injury around the Olympic period and about having to push through pain to help the team. He described it simply: they had to get it done. That mentality showed toughness, but it also hinted at the weight he was already carrying at such a young age. And then came the question nobody could answer. What happens after the miracle start? What happens when the records are already broken, the gold medal is already won, and the whole world expects the next leap to come immediately? That is where Quincy's story stopped being just a talent story. That is where it became a pressure story. Because in 2025, the kid who had been flying past everyone was about to hit resistance. Real resistance. Losses, doubt, and the kind of setback that makes people wonder if the magic is fading. But what happened next may have been the most important run of his life. The backlash, the pressure, and the 44.1, that changed everything. For a while, it looked like Quincy Wilson could do no wrong. He had broken age group barriers, he had made the Olympic team, he had won gold while still in high school, and to the outside world, the rise looked almost too perfect. But sports has a way of testing people right after their biggest breakthrough, and in 2025, Quincy got tested hard. The new season did not feel like a smooth victory lap. It felt more like a warning. Yes, Quincy was still brilliant. He opened the year by lowering his own high school 400-meter record again, running 45.66 indoors. That reminded everyone that the talent was still there. The engine was still elite. The ceiling was still massive. But talent does not protect you from pressure, and pressure was now following him everywhere. He was no longer the surprise kid. He was the name everyone expected to win. Every race carried extra weight. Every bad result turned into a bigger story. Even Quincy himself admitted he got a wake-up call after an early season loss, saying that it made him realize there is always somebody hungrier. That is a powerful thing for a teenage star to admit, because it means he understood something many athletes learn too late. Hype does not run the race for you. That mindset mattered because the losses were coming, not career-ending losses, not proof that he was finished, but the kind of losses that make people panic. Fans started asking questions. Had the pressure become too much? Was he being overexposed? Was he burning out? Was the sport pushing him too fast? When a teenager reaches world-class attention this early, people become impatient. They want every race to look like destiny. The second it doesn't, they start talking. Then, one of the biggest blows of the season arrived. At the 2025 USA Indoor Championships, Quincy finished 5th in the men's 400-meter final in 46.13. He still earned an invitation to join Team USA for the World Indoor Championships, but he turned it down, saying school comes first. That decision said a lot about the people around him. They were not chasing every spotlight, they were still thinking long-term, still protecting the bigger plan. That kind of patience is rare in modern sports, especially when everyone around you wants the next headline now. And maybe that is why Quincy's team stayed calm even when the noise grew louder, because the real storm had not even hit yet. At the US Outdoor Championships, Quincy entered the 400 meters with a real chance to make a statement and fight for a place at the World Championships. This was a huge moment, a reset moment, a chance to remind people exactly who he was. Instead, it turned into a shock. Quincy ran 45.39 in his semifinal and did not advance to the final. Just like that, he was out. No final, no world team, no easy redemption. For a runner who had already shown he could run 44.10 that season, it was a brutal result, and the kind that brings every critic back out of hiding. And here is where this story becomes bigger than track times. Because this is the point where a lot of young phenoms start changing everything. New plans, new voices, panic decisions, rushing for answers, trying to silence doubters immediately. But Quincy and Coach Joe Lee did not seem to go that route. They stayed patient. That matters, because sometimes the hardest thing in sports is not training harder. It is refusing to panic. Quincy had already said one of his biggest goals was simply to run fast and stay healthy mentally and physically. For a teenager carrying this much attention, that is not a small goal. That is survival. That is wisdom. That is maturity way beyond his years. Source. So while people on the outside were reacting to one bad result, Quincy kept building. And then came Memphis, July 2025, the Ed Murphy Classic. This was not supposed to be the race that changed the conversation, but it did. In a field that included seasoned professionals, including Olympic champion Stephen Gardner, Quincy Wilson stepped onto the track and delivered the kind of performance that completely resets a narrative. He ran 44.10 in the 400 meters, breaking his own under-18 world best and becoming the fastest under-18 400-meter runner in history. That time also tied him for the fourth fastest 400 meters in the world in 2025 at that point. Let that sink in. After the losses, after the missed final, after the questions, after the criticism, a 17-year-old showed up against pros and ran 44.10. That is not a comeback. That is a warning. World Athletics confirmed the scale of it too. Quincy improved his own world under-18 best from 44.20 to 44.10 and beat fellow Olympic gold medalist Bryce Deadman in the process. Suddenly, the same people wondering if the hype had gone too far had to deal with a different reality. The hype had not gone too far. They had just forgotten how young he still was. Source. And that may be the most important part of this whole story. Quincy Wilson is not a finished athlete. He is still developing, still learning how to lose, still learning how to carry expectation, still learning how to balance school, life, fame, and performance while running times that most full-grown professionals never touch. That is what makes him so fascinating. Not just the speed, the timing, the age, the pressure, the room left to grow. Veterans in the sport have already noticed it. Olympic stars like Rai Benjamin and Vernon Norwood have offered support and guidance, and Benjamin even said Quincy is wise beyond his age with a great family and management around him. That kind of praise matters because it suggests the people at the top of the sport see more than raw talent. They see structure, they see maturity, they see staying power. So what happens next? That is the scary part for the rest of the world, because if Quincy is already running 44.10 at 17, if he is already an Olympic gold medalist, if he is already surviving pressure that crushes older athletes, then what does he look like in 2 years? What does he look like fully developed? What does he look like when strength, racecraft, and patience all catch up to the talent? That is why Quincy Wilson is not just another great high school runner. He is a long-term threat to the entire event. The setbacks did not end the story. They revealed the story. They showed that this rise would not be clean, and maybe that is exactly why it feels real. Temporary failure did not define him. Pressure did not finish him. Public doubt did not shrink him. If anything, it sharpened him. And now the world is watching a teenager who already knows something many stars never learn. One bad race means nothing. One great race changes everything. Quincy Wilson has already broken records. He has already shocked the sport. And if this is what he looks like before his prime, then the rest of track and field should be very nervous, because the next chapter may be the one where he stops chasing history and starts hunting legends. So here's the question. How far do you think Quincy Wilson can go? Can he become the future king of the 400 meters? Drop your prediction in the comments and subscribe for more sports documentaries like this.